In this video and the next video, we're going to take a short break from the JSP and servlet side of things to take a look at a couple ways that we can dress up our websites to make our views a little nicer. What I'm going to show you in the next two lessons, this first one, we're going to focus on cascading style sheets, or CSS. Now, these are a nice way to style our pages in a uniform manner that we can use throughout our code. We'll follow that up with a lesson on jQuery, which is one of the many JavaScript libraries that we can use in order to make our views a lot more powerful once again. So for this lesson, we need World Manager themed CSS.war, and that will give us the cascading style sheet information that we're going to be viewing today. We already have everything in place just like we had before when we logged into the database. This is the non-SSL version, so we've taken that stuff all back out. So now what we're looking at is our system. Everything's in place. We're going to log in through the database. We're going to access information through the database. So everything's the same there. The last thing we want to do now is start to make things look a little nicer. So in order to do that, we need to have style sheets that we can use in order to dress up our elements. And so how this works is we'll create a folder called CSS. And you can name that file whatever you would like it to be named. Later, you'll need to reference it. So you just need to make sure that that file name makes sense. And then you put your files inside of there. Menubar.css and stylesheet.css are a couple I've already created. So let's take a look at the style sheet. What does it do? Well, essentially, it tells the system how to style certain elements. And if we use the dot syntax, that means we're looking for a class element on the tag of whatever control we're trying to dress up. So if we use .banner, we would want class equal banner. So we'll use that for our div to set a banner in order to have the background color that's listed there along with the height and width and all the padding and margin information. We'll have some default text we can use, text normal, text bold, container element, and a content element which we'll use to show some stuff, and a footer element. We also have menu bar, and this I separated into another file because it makes sense that the nav bar might change across systems or be easier to use and also maintain if it's in its own file. Now there's no limit to how many files you can load, so you just need to keep track of how many resources you want to have, and of course the more you can minimize it, the more responsive your pages will be in the long run. But for this little of an example, multiple files isn't going to be a real big deal. So here we have navbar, and it's going to basically have everything floating to the left and essentially style out the UL elements, the list item elements, and the A anchor links. Then we're going to add a hover element. We'll add a color on the hover, and then we'll add a different color for the text on the hover. And we'll have our active link that we could show if we wanted to, which will allow us to show us which page we're on. That sets up our menu bar and our style sheets. So all we've done is added CSS files and included this text in the CSS files. But now we need to actually reference it on our page and then be able to see it. So in order to do this, we need to create links on our page. So here what you can see is you have a link. The rel is equal to style sheet, and the type is text CSS, and the href is the path to that CSS. So here they're going to be located in a directory one below us, CSS, with menu bar and site style. So you can see both those are referenced on this page in the header and thereby loaded into the page and able to be used. So now what we want to do is when we have our specific elements in play, we can rely on that style sheet to render those elements the way we want. The nice thing is you can see here, now we've been able to eliminate all the table syntax. And this is one of the big advantages of using CSS. You can now do things without tables. There's, arguments each way, which is good, which is not. But if you want to have a site that's flexible and able to be reorganized, for instance, if we wanted to change the navbar from being on the left-hand side to go across the top, if we have style sheets in place, we should be able to do that fairly easily without having to change much on our views at all. We have more power and flexibility by using style sheets. And you can see all we have to do is import the header, the navbar, and they will automatically be styled correctly because they will contain the references to those style sheet links. And so here we have as well our regular code that we had before and our footer. And so if we take a quick look into the header and the footer, we can see that each one of those is just going to have a div wrapping it with the specific class that we're expecting on the style sheet. So once we put that in play, it doesn't change the layout at all. It's actually the class element that's doing it for us. So here's our navbar. Again, we're going to add navbar around it. Nothing else much changing on that. And on our list cities and on our list countries and on our add city page, we have to reference the links as well, but we have to remember that they're up a directory and then down a directory. So we hit up and then down, and then we go into menu bar. Once we have that in place, we are able to easily list out our elements. And here we did use a table inside of the div, which is not a problem at all. And everything is referenced. So we should be good to go. This is just a plain old image, just to show you we can dress this up a little bit and make our site real nice with minimal effort just by using a couple style sheets and a couple images. So let's go ahead and run this and see what our pages look like now. So what we can see is that our style sheet has automatically rendered our image at the top. It's given us a nav bar on the left that looks a lot nicer. It's given us a content area and a footer area. Now obviously the size on this isn't very good, but to keep this in a demonstrable size, I thought it'd be nice to use a smaller size. So you'd want to modify this in the real world. But you can also see that just with CSS, we also have the ability to modify the hover. And again, we change the color of the background and the color of the text when we hover over an element, which allows us to then very easily see our pages in action. And as we go through the system, we can continue to see our pages will continue to render that same look that we had all the way down. And essentially everything works with our style. And now our pages look a lot nicer and much more uniform.